Welcome to Cybersecurity Ally Podcast by Fortra, a conversation for collective defense. I'm Josh Davies.
And I'm Antonio Sanchez. And welcome to episode 2. Second one, so we didn't get canceled after the first one, so that's awesome. Guess we're
Pilot
gonna
2.0.
Yes, pilot number 2. Awesome. So anyway, so we're gonna cover a few things today. A little bit about current events, some interesting things in the cyber world that Josh and I kind of scrounged up the various news articles. We'll cover a little bit about what's the latest with Patch Tuesday. There's an emerging threat actually that's hot off the press, so that one's going to be a good one to talk about as well. And going to recap AWS reInvent. I was out there. We'll got a lot to talk about that one, and then we'll talk a little bit about predictions. So anyway, let's go ahead and get going.
So let's get straight into it. Current events. What have you been reading in the news, wherever you get your information from, whatever forums you're snooping, that maybe impacts the threat landscape and kind of security strategies for businesses?
Well, you know what? Every week there's somebody in the news that's been ransomed or there's been attack. So while those are interesting and scary, I like to find the things that maybe kind of take the fight back to the bad guys. And there's something that was actually happened in Africa, where African law enforcement were able to arrest over 1,000 cyber criminals. They called it Operation Serengeti. It was over 1,000 arrests. Apparently, the scammer group that was arrested, or this group that was arrested, they estimate that their victims incurred something like 190 million US dollars in losses and spanned about 35,000 victims. And this is a pretty significant sting because it actually was an operation that spanned 19 different African countries. So, chalk one up for the good guys to take down some of the bad guys and disrupt some of their infrastructure. So, again, good news there. Again, trying to take the fight to the threat actors. So that was probably one of the things that kind of stuck out to me is, taking the good fight back to them.
We've got to celebrate those wins, haven't we? And we talk about the need for global cohesion or cooperation when it comes to shutting down these organizations, because cybersecurity doesn't respect your borders, and you need to do the same for when it comes to holding these people to account. So it was great to see Afropol, I'm not sure I'm saying that, but the Africa Interpol version, right, joining with Interpol and also private organizations as well. I believe we had a little hand in helping them with some of the threat intelligence also.
We sure did. Yeah, we sure did. They can't always name everybody, but it's pretty neat to find out that we did have a hand in providing some insights and information to be able to do this. But yes, it's African Interpol, which they call Afropol.
Afropol, that's it. The R was tripping me up. But
yeah,
it looks like
it's
some of
weird.
Yeah, some of it was scam stuff, call centers. I saw like even a multi-layered marketing scheme, which is the new word for pyramid schemes. But also there was some kind of straight up credit card stealing attacks using dodgy scripts on payment websites. So interesting to see that one, because that's been a real focus actually. As PCI 4.0 has called out that can't be something you can turn a blind eye to now. So there's a two prongs in it. Us getting better at defending against these attacks, but also taking the fight to the attackers, so that it's not as big an incentive for them to turn to cybercrime. I did notice some comments saying, "Hey, we need to kind of be a bit more investment in these edge countries as well, to maybe give them alternatives, because sometimes it's the same skill set the good guys have as the bad guys." Yeah. And the last thing to say on this, I saw that really interesting World Index on where the attackers come from. I hadn't seen that before. I don't know if you had.
I hadn't seen it either.
So it looks like an academic attempt to place which countries most cybercrime comes from. And no real surprises, top 5: Russia, Ukraine, China, United States, and Nigeria. So that was the first time I'd seen it laid out like that.
Yep, absolutely. Yeah, that was interesting.
Yeah. The next one, I believe you told me about this one, so I've held off reading about it so I can get it from you. AI Granny, what on earth is that?
AI Granny, again, kind of another one taking the fight back to the bad guys. So, the scammers are out there. The borders, they don't care about borders, and they're calling people and trying to scam them out of money. Well, apparently, British telecom company O2 has used AI and created a character that they call Daisy. Now, Daisy is an elderly woman. And Daisy has been designed to essentially just, whenever a scammer calls, is to just keep them on the phone, and with just random information about her cat, unable, not being able to follow instructions. Apparently, the model can stay on the phone with the scammer for I think I read for 40 minutes. So I'm like, wow, that's an innovative use of AI, because at the end of the day, the scammers are out scamming whoever they can, getting whoever they can on the phone. And if they're wasting time talking to an AI generated, character, then that's time that they're not spending going
Mm-hmm.
after a real human. But
Yeah.
yeah,
I
AI
mean,
granny.
yeah, it's great to see the honeypots have kind of transferred onto social engineering honeypots, so we can, I guess, learn their tactics as well as just waste their time. I hope they get some content out of this as well, because I do follow some YouTubers who do there's a scam baiting, and I
The scam.
bet
Oh,
AI,
I've seen
yeah,
those. Yeah.
it's a great thing to have in the background, and you drink the tears of the scammers to a degree.
Yeah.
But yeah,
Yeah.
hopefully, there's a great advert as well if you want to check out AI Granny on YouTube. I think they present it quite well.
Nice. Yeah, I haven't seen the full advertisement, but I did kind of watch a little bit of it. But yeah, I've seen those the scammers where the actual scammers, the people on the other side are keeping them on the phone for sometimes hours on end and frustrating
Mm,
the actual scammers themselves. But
doing the
it's
good
the
work.
same thing, taking the fight back to them and trying to disrupt them and wasting their time. And some of the people figure it out. I heard some YouTube videos of those, but also with the AI granny, and some of the language is not safe for work. So fair warning to everybody who's on a work issued device. So use your own
Yeah.
personal device to watch all that. But
Great,
again,
great use of
great
LLMs.
use. Yeah,
Yeah, I think
absolutely.
haven't seen a huge amount of those yet in cybersecurity, but this is probably up there for me.
Yeah, absolutely. Cool. But yeah, so that's a AI granny. And kind of staying on the scamming topic, there was a video that I went through my LinkedIn feed. I don't know the source, hadn't been able to verify the source, but it looked like a raid where Russian people went in and raided what looks like a legitimate business in an office building, and it turned out to be a scam call center. I mean, but if you look at the video, and it looks like a legitimate office building or a legitimate business in just a regular office building, office district. You know, so great, they took them down, but at the same time, it kind of makes you want. We think back to this is a criminal enterprise, so they operate it like a business, and it looks like a business. But for Russian authorities to come into a Russian call center and bring it down, kind of makes you wonder. I wonder who got upset or who they upset for them to
Mm-hmm.
come in and take that down, because that just seems a little odd to me. I mean, did you have any thoughts on that one?
Yeah, I mean, there's that other case we'll talk about in a second, whether the Russian threat actor was taking over part of the ransomware thing.
Yep.
They do generally, the consensus is if you're targeting Western organizations or non-Russian organizations, you can do what you want. And I think that guy, is it Wazawaka? Actually, sorry if I butchered that name.
Yep.
Nodded to that where he said, don't mess about where you live. Travel local and don't go abroad. Mother Russia will help you and let you get
Right.
away with everything. So I don't know if that's a little bit of here, if we extrapolate that to the call center. But it's great. I mean, it's great to see. I know we talk about them being scammers, but also they're getting people to install remote desktop software on their machines, and particularly with the hybrid workforce as well. It's introducing risk to businesses. It's not just a personal issue or an issue that your grandmother faces from getting scammed out of her finances. There's also a level of social engineering here where you could if you had a larger goal than just redirecting funds, that could play into a full-blown cybersecurity compromise. So yeah, what are your thoughts on these stories? Because it's great to see. I love you
Hmm.
love seeing progress here. But what do you
Right.
think?
Yeah. Well, first, well done on the name. It was. I don't think I can say it. Was Awaka Mikhail
Between the two of
Matviv?
us, one of us has got
One of
enough.
us has got it right between the two of us. But yeah, so that's the one that was the one on the Krebs on Security. By the way, if you don't follow Krebs on Security, you should. Fantastic
Totally.
writer, journalist. But yeah, what Wazawaka or Wazawaka? But yeah, he was the one that was taken down. But just like you got to think about the mindset of somebody that says, "I can do whatever I want. My country will protect me as long as I don't do anything against my own countrymen or my own, you know, basically anybody
Mm.
within my own country." But just the mindset and the audacity of thinking that it's free reign as long as you attack somebody else, they'll be protected. But in this case, he wasn't protected. So again, kind of makes you wonder who did he upset, um, or what entity got upset to the point where Russian authorities take action on a Russian actor. In this case, a couple Russian actors. You had that guy Wakawasa, as well as that other call center as well. So, but I
Hmm.
mean, again, let's assume that it there it was done for a reason, and good reason is you're taking down some scammers, you're taking out some significant actors out there, and
The bad reason
hopefully,
is showing that you need to play by the rules and maybe made an
well, yeah,
example of. It could be, but
well,
yeah, it's been
yeah,
a trend. Russia have done lots of stuff like a few ransomware gangs that they've dismantled or at least been seen to do. It's always hard to know with these things. Is this like a scapegoating exercise? Is the real kind of
right, yeah,
genius has been behind it, been caught? But yeah, it's something.
it's something, yeah. So we'll celebrate those. But
Hmm.
anyway, there was did you see the article came out of Korea where a CEO and a few of his employees got arrested for manufacturing, adding DDoS functionality to satellite receivers? Did you see that one?
I did, and this one really got me going. It took me a while to decipher exactly what was going on actually, but I think it seems to be the dodgy streaming sticks. I don't know if that's a term, a British slangism of it, but like the kind of jailbroken streaming sticks you can buy where you get all cable access and films. It's like the unofficial Netflix type of thing. It seems to be that type of device because the comment was about DDoSing competitors, right?
Right. Yeah. So the article, by the way, giving credit where we saw it, it was in
Mm.
Bleeping Computer. Again, if you don't follow them, it's another great publication to follow. But yeah, the satellite receiver is, so like when I think about satellite receiver, it's my TV or my cable company that's providing me a receiver so I can be able to watch 100 channels, 200 channels, or whatever it is, in that device being preloaded, because they wouldn't name who the end user, the customer, the buyer was, which makes
Hmm.
me wonder if it's one of the major well-known ones out there, whether or not they knew or didn't know that they were buying. But yeah, the ability to just launch a DDoS attack to
Yeah.
one of their competitors and kind of have the ability to sabotage them. Yeah, this
Yeah.
is no small feat, because this happened over the course of 5 years. Out of those 240, I think I read like 40% of them came preloaded with the DDoS functionality, and then the rest of them could be added through a firmware update, which those happen
Yeah.
pretty regularly. So this was no
Retrofitted.
small. Yeah,
It,
I mean, talk
it,
about supply chain compromise in the making. I mean, that's always kind of in the news. And
hmm
wow, that was over the course of 5 years, and they haven't named who the buyers were of the satellite receivers, which makes you
Yeah, but
wonder
the
if
end
it's one of the major
users
ones.
will have been sending DDoS attacks, which, for those who don't know, basically just floods of requests to
Right.
overwhelm target infrastructure, whatever that might be. So they unknowingly have purchased this satellite receiver and are now launching attacks from their home network. Potentially could be pinned with criminal activity themselves. So it really is quite terrible. But reading into it, it sounded like it was a feature request by the purchaser. So this is why my
Right.
mind has gone to this is some sort of pirate version of a satellite kind of service. And because apparently a competitor of them was DDoSing their stuff, so they thought, hey, let's bring it back to them. And the easiest way to do that is shipping a DDoS receiver with all of our satellite receivers rather than finding their own infrastructure or hiring a botnet. So this was really a really different story. I hadn't seen something like this in a while.
Yeah. Yeah. But
So
yeah,
the
more
sorry, go on.
more to come.
Yeah.
Waiting to see what happens with that one.
Yeah, it seems like there's a few people outstanding they want to bring to justice. So last one for me, I saw that CISA, the US organization, and we've really done a worldwide trip here on this month's in news. So well done. But they allow the Brit to bring it back to America.
Africa, UK, Russia, Korea, now US.
Yeah. So this one was, it's a little bit tongue in cheek to start with, because the article I read was U.S. government hacks itself, which I realized this was not aimed at the practitioner people, because it's a penetration testing exercise, which is intended, and you're meant to hack the target. You're meant to find the vulnerabilities and go and fix them afterwards. So it's testing out your security posture, your threat detection and response teams, and your internal processes and so on. But what was interesting about this was the way they managed to compromise the server infrastructure was not through a new exploit, but through an exploit a previous penetration testing team had done, and they'd installed a web shell, and the web shell was still there. So the backdoor they'd created to access this machine was still available, and they just simply communicated to it, and they said, "Yeah, I'm still here. What code do you want to execute?" And from there, they're able to move into the organization. And there are a few lessons learned they shared here. So I'll read those out, and then I'm going to ask you, why do you think they're kind of publicizing this? Because they've not named anybody, and it's not about naming and shaming, but I'll leave you to answer that part. But they kind of concluded with the assessed organization had insufficient technical controls to prevent and detect malicious activity. So even after that they got in, they weren't responding to the actions they were doing internally, and they were literally trying to sound the alarm by doing like a gigabyte of data exfiltration and a few other deliberate noisy attacks. Denial of service they even used, and ultimately said there was an over reliance in that organization on endpoint security over other security controls. So why are they publicizing this, and what are the kind of lessons we can maybe learn?
I think part of the thing they're publicizing is, everybody, regardless of what industry size of your organization is, should be doing something like this to test your resiliency, to test your posture. But I think the other thing is, hey, don't always take somebody's word for it as far as, when everything is done, and make sure that they've done the cleanup. You need to be able to sure you have people in place to ensure that you said you did all the cleanup, but you didn't do all the cleanup. You left some remnants there, you don't hire a contractor to come work on your house and then kind of leave shovels lying around in the backyard and say, they're done. The
well,
fact
what's
that they
worse,
left it, or
they would
worse,
have told them. They would have told them where the shovels are and where the things to clean up were. They're like kind of in the report, right?
Exactly. But the endpoint one was the interesting one, that everything was so endpoint centric, because like we've been talking about this for years. Like not everything happens on the endpoint. You can find a lot of stuff if you're also looking across the network and across the wire. In fact, ideally, if you can find stuff on the wire before it hits the endpoint, that's a better opportunity to be able to mitigate sooner and reduce the impact of whatever it is that happens, or whatever it is that they're looking for. I mean, we always talk about having layers of control and ensuring that you have certain processes or certain controls upstream, because the earlier you can catch something, the easier and the less costly it is to damage the organization or cause damage to the organization. So the fact that they're so endpoint centric tells me that, yeah, even they have an opportunity to be able to learn and improve some things, and again, look further outside the perimeter before things get to the network. I mean, that was kind of, before they get to the endpoint, but that was kind of my initial reaction. It was like, we've been saying this for years. You can't just rely on the tech that's at the endpoint.
Yeah, and endpoint attacks have exploded in the last few years, particularly like the fireless malware attacks. So I do see,
Right.
that's why EDR kind of stepped into this arena, and it's a valuable tool. We're not saying don't use EDR at all. We're just saying remember to use it as part of a holistic security strategy, right? That each detection and each control has different strengths. It's about bringing them all together. That's really what we've kind of landed with this XDR messaging now, right? More visibility, more correlation. That's the best way to catch things quickly. So what's next, Antonio?
Well, Patch Tuesday. So this one's timely. Patch Tuesday came out, 70 fixes in this Patch Tuesday. 16 of them were considered critical, and 1 0 day, the 0 day to be able to elevate privileges. it almost made it seem like 0 days are so common that you almost gloss over them now because it's like, oh, okay, 1 0 day. I mean, I don't know. I mean, that's just kind of my thought. That is that the world we're living in now, that when we see something that there's a 0 day in Microsoft, which is what, 80%, 90% of the install base that's out there, we almost just gloss over it, have be kind of come a little bit numb to it.
Yeah, the data supports that. We have seen like 2023 was definitely the year of the 0 day, and more we've ever seen, and the most exploits were using them as well. 2024, I think we're on track. If we may have already surpassed the number of 0 days discovered, but it also could be a testament to the fact that we are finding these novel attacks quicker, disclosing
True.
them in a more
Yep.
better way, I guess, and also security researchers are finding them because some for a 0 day, it has to be exploited before there's a fix available. But then also look at the rest of this list. You said there's 70 and only one has a 0 day, so there's 69 vulnerabilities that have been fixed before anyone worked out how to exploit them. So yeah, a lot of vulnerabilities, a lot of 0 days out there. For those worried, this is I think 6.7 out of 10 vulnerability that allows you to gain system privileges. So that is the highest level of privileges on a system, but you do have to already have access to that system. Right. So high level of privileges, but they need to be on the machine already in order to exploit it. I don't think remote exploitation is possible in the current data I've seen, but more to come. I think there hasn't been a public write-up yet, but that probably will come once everyone's had a chance to patch.
Right. And kind of staying on the 0 day topic, emerging threats. So there's an emerging threat that just that's happening, or that's kind of going on right now, or at least just kind of popped up in the last couple of days. I know you've been kind of closer to that one. Can you talk a little bit about what you
Sure.
found out about that?
So I come from the managed detection response side of Fortra, and so we have customers that we are constantly threat hunting in their environment, looking for things, and Fortra declares these emerging threats, and often it's the MDR team who get to maybe go and find instances of them because they touch so much. So there was actually two since we last talked. The first one was an identity IQ improper access control vulnerability. That was earlier on in the month. It's a critical issue, 10 out of 10, but we haven't seen any exploitation of that in our customer base. And talking to some of the researchers and SOC people, they think it's mainly because there isn't really public proof of concept out there that they've seen. So yet to really see that one impact, although because of its criticality and the potential there, we still declared that as an emerging threat. The second one, though, this is interesting. And at the time of recording, this was announced. The emerging threat was announced a day ago, and it's to do with the Clio file upload software. So there's unrestricted file upload and download vulnerability that basically allows you to put whatever you want onto that system.
Yikes.
We saw, so we have seen a customer that's been compromised by this, and we're actively working with them to kind of fully sort it out. So because it was a 0 day, we didn't see the exploit that was initially sent to trigger that file upload, but subsequently there's been a lot of suspicious activity because there was the file basically was a malware dropper, and it created backdoors. It's embedded itself in a few persistence areas. So we're working on the cleanup with the customer right now. Only one customer, and maybe that will only be what we see because apparently I did a search. There's only 4,200 organizations that use this technology, the Clio technology. So yeah, hopefully not going to be a huge one. Because sometimes these ETs can get a bit overhyped about the potential, but then you got to remember what's the actual impact. So if anyone wants advice, sorry, Antonio.
No, go ahead. Finish your thought.
I was going to say, if anyone wants to know the specific fixes for those vulnerabilities you might be affected, you can head over to Fortra Emerging Threats page, and we have a write-up there as well as links to your further information if you're concerned your systems might be affected.
Yeah, it's interesting. Whenever kind of we see these early ons, it's kind of you're learning things as you go, and sometimes you see these huge numbers like, oh, these thousands, this vendor that has thousands of part of their install base, and then you start to learn a little bit more. Well, of those thousands, it's really only ones that have this particular product, which now you went from thousands to maybe 1,000. And then, within this product, it's only the ones that have this version. So you went from 1,000 to thousands to maybe 1,000 to maybe a few hundred. And it's only this version, if you're using this specific version of OS, which then kind of narrows the thing. So it'll be interesting to see how that one how that one develops. And that's
Yeah.
usually how these things happen is this vendor, but it's this product and it's this version of this product and it's this, and you kind of start narrowing down a little bit, which then allows you to say,
I
okay,
totally
this
agree with you.
isn't as big.
This one, the current consensus is that lots of versions are vulnerable, including
Oh,
lots
really?
of older
Okay.
versions, which
Oh,
is
wow.
which is abnormal. It's just that's outside of the norm what we see. But yeah, like your point though is that to come down the hype. I often use the Shodan, the search engine, to see what kind of vulnerable systems might be out there to get a feel for, is this a Log4j where everybody's vulnerable to it, or is this just a print spooler type of thing?
I wonder if anybody's kind of rehashing some bad memories from Log4j, because that's an example of quite literally everybody.
I enjoyed that one. I got to work on that one, so that one it gives me excitement still. That's why I keep bringing it up, I think. But Antonio, so this, they have a next segment which is about wish you were here, and this is one example where I really do wish I was there with you, because you got to go to Las Vegas, right, for an AWS reInvent.
I did, and let me start off by saying Las Vegas in December is way better than Las Vegas in August. So in August is Black Hat, for those of you who may be new to security. And every year Black Hat is in Las Vegas, and it's over 100 degrees. Last time I was there was 113 degrees at 9:00 at night, which Celsius, that's probably like 43, 44.
The only man with a Celsius to Fahrenheit calculator in his head.
Oh man, it's hot. So anyway, it was very nice, very pleasant. So that number one. But yeah, this was the biggest conference I've ever been to. It spanned, I think I heard the numbers were about 50,000 attendees, and it was across 4 resorts. It was the Mandalay Bay, the Wynn, the Palazzo, and the Venetian. And so and if you've been to Vegas before, those are very large properties, very large resorts. So you're going to do a lot of walking. I think I looked at my pedometer after the week was over, and in 4 days I had 45,000, just over 45,000 steps. So I'm glad I took multiple pairs of walking shoes out there, and of course got off my feet whenever I could. But it was interesting because this was not a security specific event, but rather it was a developer event is what it was. So it was not just security, but it was interesting kind of hearing some of the conversations and seeing some of the sessions and hearing the keynotes. I think one of the takeaways that I took, well, there's several takeaways, but one of them was, aside from GenAI everywhere, is a lot of the people that I spoke to, including some of the vendors that were kind of near us, was they're starting to feel GenAI fatigue in that group. So these are a bunch of software engineers, DevOps folks, and they're feeling the GenAI fatigue like everybody else. And it was interesting because I went and I talked to a few of the security specific booths. Just, you get to know people over time being in this industry. And I said, is it just me, or does it feel like that this group here is now feeling the GenAI fatigue, whereas the security industry probably had the GenAI fatigue a year ago? Because when ChatGPT came out, which we're almost 2 years into now, I think just over 2 years that ChatGPT came out, the security world went, oh my gosh, what is this? And, how do we gain some control over this?
And suddenly everything that had machine learning involved in it was slapped on with an AI badge. That quickly disappeared, thankfully.
Yeah. So it felt like, I guess, security group got there first, and now kind of that group is being there. But one of the interesting things that I found that I heard is that within one of the keynotes, they talked about how only 21% of GenAI projects actually go to production. So think about that for a minute. Only 1 out of 5 projects, regardless of the organization, end up actually being deployed. So 80% of them, 4 out of 5, don't make it through deployment. I mean, I was blown away when I heard that.
Yeah, so I said fail then. I realized that's probably a bit harsh. Sure they learned something there, but that's a lot of investment, a lot of time kind of done to do this. Did you know much about why they failed? Did they give reasons? Because I hear stuff about the law of diminishing returns sometimes, that like what we've seen with the kind of the way it's basically it uses like things that are easy to search for in a search engine. LLMs are great at returning and giving you it in a conversational manner. But the things that you'd struggle to Google, they sometimes struggle to kind of make assessments on and give you the right data back. So I've saw that more data, more compute power doesn't always equal more results
Right.
with the development there. Was there
Yeah.
anything else?
The session, like I said, was one of the keynotes. So they threw out that stat because they were pitching their new AI service, LLM service, to be able to train models and have
Is that
unbiased
Bedrock?
models. Yeah, that was Bedrock.
Mm-hmm.
One of the announcements. There were a lot of announcements, but anecdotally, when I was talking to some folks, the people that came up to the booth and just kind of walking the show floor of the expo hall, the anecdotal feedback was, we spend 6 months, 9 months, however many people hours, you know, and when you start turning that into dollar figures, I mean, some of these are in the millions of dollars, and find out that the models didn't actually work. You couldn't get unbiased models. You couldn't train the models properly. Or once they actually put them to production, they realized that the benefit was negligible. It's, 1 to
Mm-hmm.
3% difference in productivity, efficiency, whatever the metric that they were measuring versus what it was before. So then the conversation is, was all this really worth an extra 1 to 3%? Because they have to have that continued investment to continue to get to 1 to 3%. I guess if you're
Mm-hmm.
a super large organization where you can put a dollar figure that's significant on that 1 to 3%, and that is big enough to justify whatever the initial resource requirement was. But for most, that had a lot to do with it. It was either we were unable to train the models the way we wanted to, or we did, by the time we did finally train the models correctly, the result was negligible. Like, it's just not a good return. But again, that
Interesting.
was purely
Yeah.
anecdotal discussion I was having, but
I
still.
wonder
So
if we'll
yeah,
see.
that's why. But that's kind of why they used that stat to throw out Bedrock.
Yeah, it's a good stat, and hopefully we'll see. Once if the 20% that come out, if they are delivering really strong outcomes, and we're in that
Right.
kind of the AI revolution. I don't know if we should call it that, but people are working out slowly what to do or trying everything. So I have heard some great like high level use cases. We're getting some really specialized Gen AI models that maybe for security, right? Just look at identity security
Yeah.
information only in a kind of closed model,
Right.
and that what that could possibly pick out and help us with in the security operations side. But not yet. We'll see where this goes in the next year.
Yeah. Also, just another point on that was like scope creep. So for the ones that everybody says, make sure you have your use cases defined and make sure you know what you're tracking and measuring and stick to that. And so oftentimes you get that scope creep where you start trying to do other things with it, and it's just infinite scope creep where some of that stuff just all of a sudden doesn't. Whereas if you stayed disciplined with what you were originally trying to solve for, maybe you would have had better success. But
Mm.
definitely scope creep, either voluntary or involuntary. I guess, can you have voluntary scope creep? I'm not sure, but the discipline of staying with the project and what you want to do definitely is
Mm-hmm. I
is a
mean, that's
part of that,
also
or one of the reasons.
it's important for us on security, right? If you don't know the scope of something, then it's very hard to plan out what the risks might be as well. And I know that
Right.
there's a different consideration depending on if you're using, say, an open AI model like a chat GPT public instance. Don't put any data in there at all because you don't know who else could get it, versus a closed one you house on your cloud or your own private infrastructure. But then, that you have to consider then how that could maybe be exploited directly, or the technology could too. So scope is really important.
Right.
Were there any announcements that in the because this is normally reInvent? This is where they love to come out with some big
Yeah.
new steps forward.
Yeah, they did have some announcements. Actually, one of them was that they just released a new specialization. It's called the AWS Security Incident Response Specialization. And Fortra was one of 13 vendors that
Woo.
achieved this specialization. So it's actually pretty neat, considering the thousands of security vendors that are, in the industry, that we're one of 13. So it demonstrates our continued commitment to AWS. And I believe that's now the fifth specialization that we have now, along with several other service ready specializations and other competency achievements.
Mm-hmm.
So that's pretty exciting. And so again, we've been working with AWS for a very long time, and we're committed to AWS as well. So it was pretty nice to be recognized. They did have in the opening keynote, they actually had a slide in there that kind of went back to some of the initial partners. So the Alert Logic business unit, which is part of Fortran, was listed up there because we were one of the first partners. One of the first partners within the marketplace, as well as one of the first specializations and longtime launch partners. So it's pretty neat
rich history there
to always see our name out there. So that was pretty cool.
And it's going to keep on going now with the Fortran momentum. I know that all the different solutions are also talking to AWS, seeing what's possible there. Exciting. Guard duty extended threat detection. I read about that one, following from afar. I wasn't in Vegas, I'll say again. But guard duty being their kind of picks out threats within their environment or issues within their environment that need investigating, and they seem to have extended that capability to extended threat detection. So more correlation, more machine learning, more prioritization and contextualization, which seems like a good win.
Yep, absolutely. So yeah, that was one of the that's a security specific announcement that they made. There were other announcements that they made as well. I mean, there's lots of write-ups. I'm not going to go through all of them. But yeah, I mean, it was overall, it was interesting being at a conference that wasn't a security specific conference, because so oftentimes you kind of you have the blinders on within your product set or even your specific industry, that you tend to forget that there's a bigger world out there. That's a bigger thing that needs to be solved for. And I mean, at the end of the day, security is there to support the goals of the business. And there's not a single organization that said they wanted to be the most secure organization. Everybody wants revenue growth and profitability growth and, market share growth and kind of those things. So it was eye-opening. But most of the people that, at least that I spoke with, that I interacted with, these were DevOps people or software engineers, so not a ton of security people. There were a handful of security specific folks. A few walked up to us and they hadn't heard of Fortran before, which we're not that wasn't surprising. But when we showed them here all the different areas that we play in, like, you guys do all of this, like, oh my gosh, we're trying to reduce our number of vendors and we've been having a hard time kind of selecting somebody. You definitely would want to get you a meeting with our team, because we definitely want to talk. So that was pretty interesting to see that even at a conference like that, they were people that were kind of coming to look for us. So
awesome. Yeah. I always enjoy talking to DevOps people, because sometimes you get isolated in your SOC and you kind of have this idealistic views of how the world should work. But yeah, you got to talk to the people who are actually doing it, right? And that's the only way to work successfully with DevOps, not to isolate our functions and point the fingers. Need to work together. DevSecOps all the way.
Yeah, absolutely. But by the way, I do need to give a shout out to a company called, well, I'm not going to say the company because they're a competitor. I think they're a competitor. So I'm going to go ahead. I'm going to say it anyway. The company's name is Wiz. But they had a booth out there that looked like an old Blockbuster Video. So did they have Blockbuster Video over in the UK? Do you know what that is?
I don't think we have that. We've had equivalents, but I know the iconic, is it blue and yellow, and there.
Yeah.
And I've watched that film about the stock things that happened in the pandemic. Yeah. So they're still high profile. Do they still exist?
I think there's one in the United States. It's somewhere in the Pac Northwest. I want to say maybe Washington State or Oregon. But for those that that aren't familiar, it back before the days of Netflix and before basically digital on demand or movies on demand, if you wanted to watch a video, you had to go to either buy the video directly, which can get to be very expensive, or you could rent one at a store. So you go to a store. In this case, Blockbuster was one of the largest chains, or it was the largest chain at the time, of video stores, where you walk in and they have these huge displays of all these videos, VHS videotapes, that you can go ahead and rent, and you can rent them for a night or 3 nights or a week or however long you wanted to rent it for, right? So that's kind of what their booth looked like, except the videos they told me that they used a generative AI to come up with different names of the movie titles, and then also used it to change the image of the actual box so that they don't violate any copyright laws. So to give you an example, there was a movie in the 90s called Honey, I Shrunk the Kids. It was with Rick Moranis. So the name of the video was Honey, I Shrunk the Attack Surface. And then instead of Rick Moranis and the rest of the actors' faces that were on the cover, the AI changed it a little bit, but still kept enough of the background to know that that was the old image on the movie. Instead of Forrest Gump with Tom Hanks sitting on the bench, it was Forrester Gump with somebody else's face sitting on the bench. So it was pretty unique. I was like, okay, that's pretty cool creativity right there. So
Another great use of AI right there.
Yeah, absolutely.
Could have done that a few years ago without having to spend loads of money on design.
Exactly. You would have to hire an agency and they would have to work on it for months and they would have to, do all kinds. And I don't know, maybe they did. I don't know. But, that was pretty cool, unique use case of Gen AI, I guess. Yeah, there was another booth that was right in front of them. The name of the company is called Evasion, and they had an image. Have you seen the movie Office Space?
I have not, but I know the iconic scene.
Okay, so if you haven't seen Office Space, definitely go check it out. It's a cult classic. But there's this scene in Office Space where everybody, it kind of pokes fun at the corporate world, and everybody hates the printer because nobody can ever figure out how to make the printer work, and they always get really upset at the printer. Well, there's this scene in Office Space where this group of people just finally had enough of the printer, so they take the printer out to this open field with a bunch of baseball bats to it and just start, going to town and destroying the printer. Well, the sign for this company that in their little booth space was basically two people with baseball bats and a printer on the ground, and you could tell the generational gap. So sorry, I think you're in that gap of the ones probably more my generation that have seen Office Space and grew up with that versus the ones that maybe hadn't seen it. And there's a lot of great memes that have come out of that as well. So if you want to lose a few brain cells on a weekend, that's definitely a movie to go watch.
I get it on my winter list now.
Yeah, there you go.
If we could take us on to, we are at the very end of 2024. It's December. This is around about the time where podcasts, news articles, and all cybersecurity blogs and so on are putting out their 2025 predictions. Now, I think we can maybe take a stab at that, but I wanted to maybe do this with a little bit of a twist first. And, let's start with this question, Antonio. How valuable do you think these predictions are for informing security strategies, or do you think they're just more of a bit of a attention-grabbing headline to get some clicks?
You mean like the prediction that says next year there's going to be more attacks?
More AI.
More AI. More of this, more of that, more of everything. Yeah. I mean, we've been doing this for a while, and we've all seen... I think we've all seen at times the prediction that says, well, of course, thank you, Captain Obvious, for giving me that prediction, and kind of roll your eyes a little bit. But I've also seen a lot of really, really good ones where it's like, oh, wow, that's pretty interesting or pretty unique. Mm-hmm. And then it's also interesting to see maybe other organizations that are saying the same thing. And I'm not talking about, hey, expect more, phishing attacks, expect more ransomware attacks, expect more of this. Cause I mean, of course, cause those have been kind of happening for the last several years. You can expect more of everything, but yeah, it's important. I mean, you always want to know what's on people's minds, what's on the minds of security leaders, what's on the minds of practitioners, what's on the mind of the community in general, and what is it that we can do as a community to kind of help address that. Some of it is just process related kind of stuff, where it doesn't cost anything, but just shedding some light and shedding some awareness on some things that can be done. That's what I think. I mean, do you agree, disagree?
Yeah, no, I mean, I think some of them I do. I kind of look at them and after a few years, you're like, yeah, that one's not great. But I do really enjoy sometimes you get someone with a real specialized field. They really are dug into something and they make a really interesting prediction about something I hadn't even considered. So it brings topics into the conversation that are interesting. I think that's probably the main thing. It triggers security conversations, it's a great thing to have that conversation at the end of the year, reflect back and look forward. I think that there are probably a few and far between predictions that really help drive the planning for 2025, the evolution beyond. Probably those are the easy ones, the ones we don't like reading as much, but those are probably the ones that actually are going to be best for informing your security strategies. So yeah, with that kind of said, have you made? We've been in this game for a few times. I know you've been asked for your predictions. I think I've read a few online over the years. Do you want to reflect on any predictions that you've made previously that you kind of think, yeah, I really nailed that there, and it all came to you, my magic ball, crystal ball was working that day, or maybe on the other side, ones that really kind of crashed and burned.
One of them is, at least the one that comes to mind for me, is the workforce shortage prediction. So the number that's been thrown around, or the most recent number, I think, is 4.5 million unfilled cybersecurity jobs in the United States. And if you go back a few years, that number was, steadily started at, 2 million. Well, when they started tracking it, and I think ISC Square is the one that was tracking it, is 2.5 million, which grew to 3 million, and 3.5 and 4. And so the prediction was always, there's going to be the gap in headcount to cybersecurity roles is going to widen. Did I say that right? The gap in people to cybersecurity roles. There are going to be more cybersecurity roles than there are people to be able to fill them.
So was your prediction that it was we were going to address it and it was going to be closed?
The prediction was always I said, yeah, that's going to get wider. There aren't enough people. Okay. But over the past couple of years, I've kind of changed my mindset a little bit in that there's a lot of headcount and people that are available to take on a large number of these roles. It's just that the hiring practices are ones that everybody wants the unicorns to handle. Nobody wants to train, the entry level people to be junior level people and the junior level people to be senior level people. And the reality is there's plenty, or I've come to change my mindset where I say, you know what, I was wrong. It wasn't that there aren't enough skilled headcount. There's plenty of skilled headcount out there. It's just they're not getting the opportunities because they either don't have a certain, in-depth experience that the organization's looking for and not willing to train to get there. So it's more of a hiring practices, where the problem is one that hiring practices, for the most part, they're still there, and it's getting better. There's some organizations that say they look for aptitude, they look for critical thinking skills, they look for communication skills, and they look for
some orgs are doing it well.
The curiosity. So there's some that are doing it, and I see a lot of and I follow a lot of security leaders that are kind of pounding that drum, that say this is what you're looking for. Not everybody's gonna find the unicorn. They don't exist. So it's now changing the mindset that there's plenty of headcount out there, is the point being. So the workforce shortage shouldn't be as big as it is if you're willing to say, I need to look for something else. So I would say my mindset is changed with that one.
Yeah, it's hire someone. Sorry to jump over there, but hire someone and turn them into the analyst you want is probably a better way of filling that. It's no secret there's a cybersecurity shortage. That's people are rushing to educate and make career transitions, and so on. So I did see a really worrying stat, though, or article about how many job applications are posted with no intention of ever being filled, to give struggling teams the feeling that, yeah, we are looking for somebody to help you out. Yeah, it's going to get better. It wasn't specific to security, but it did make me think, I've heard of some stories about that with open recs forever, and they're like, we can't fill them. What if they never intended to fill them, and it was just to kind of keep the people on the ground?
And you could say that happens for every industry and every role and every function, right? Yeah. There's recs that are out there that with no intention of being filled.
Yeah. So my prediction that I think you might laugh at this one. My worst prediction I ever made was a number of years ago. I decided to say, I think ransomware is going to fizzle out and go away. We're going to see a decrease in ransomware attacks. No, I was basing this on this was the old, and it's not even that long ago, but when the purest definition of ransomware, where you would could grab hold of as many machines as possible, many systems as possible, and encrypt them and give the ransomware note, and you'd sell them back the key or extort them for the encryption key so they could get back online. Where businesses would have to be on pen and paper to operate, like there was almost no systems available to them for them to use. So the way security was going, we're a lot more focused on segmentation. Zero trust was being talked about, and so like limiting that blast radius, and just general threat detection and response was getting better at catching ransomware sequences. And the publicity of ransomware, I think, also made people aware of it, so they were kind of addressing it. It was everyone's number one priority to address. So I thought this feels like the perfect storm where actually we're going to stop them kind of being able to knock all your systems offline and persuade you to pay the ransom. If they only get a fraction of it, you can probably deal with that while you remain partially operational. But I was very wrong, and it didn't go away.
Well, you know what? I mean, I laughed at the beginning, but when you explain it that way and you kind of go back a few years and think about kind of what the state of the world was, that's actually pretty logical thought process there in the moment. Yeah, that one went
the headline doesn't look good though, does it? And
no.
yeah, to defend my prediction, I would say that the definition of ransomware then changed into this double, triple, even quadruple extortion, where they take the data, steal data is probably more their focus now, and selling that on the dark web unless you pay them a ransom back, and disclosing to compliance bodies to you try and get you a bigger fine from them, because if you don't adhere to your disclosure responsibilities. So yeah, ransomware evolved. The definition of ransomware changed, but I wonder if the data shows that the purest version of it, encryption, did die down. I'm not going to look because I don't want to know.
Imagine that the thief snitching on their victim.
Yeah, it is funny, that one.
Gosh, all right. Well, yeah, that one. Yeah. Well, I mean, since we're on predictions, I mean, do you have a bold prediction you want to make for 2025?
Yeah, sure. And I think, bold is where I like to play, because we could do the obvious predictions. So this may well, I'll do an ambitious prediction. Maybe I'll do a couple if we have time.
Okay.
The first one, so I think we're going to see a real increase in the next year and going forward as well into governmental spending in cybersecurity. I'm seeing a lot more noise. Even that article we talked about earlier about CISA, about the government bodies talking about the cybersecurity initiatives they're doing on critical infrastructure. There's an elevated global threat. We've seen different government bodies and ministers at different times over the last year announce there's an elevated threat from certain countries, and also pointing to AI that is going to make these even harder to deal with. So I think that noise has to be backed up by action, by investing in cybersecurity programs. And the other contributing factor, I think, is national spend on defense is increasing across the world, really. I know that there's a big thing to make sure everyone in NATO does at least a 2%, and the talk is of going to 3 and even 4. And it has been steadily increasing. So that made me think, does cybersecurity spend count towards your defense spend? Now, I'm not certain it does in every scenario. I had to do a lot of research and I struggled to find a concrete answer, but I do have a friend who works in the Ministry of Defence, as the UK defence body. And I asked him and he said, it depends. So some of it does and some of it doesn't. So I think we'll see. I want to say an easy win to try to invest money there, but it's a definite way to increase your spend, and a real area I think we'll see these kind of proxy warfare, cyber war going on before we'll get to any real kinetic or physical warfare. So it's a real area I think we'll see people investigating. And to go back to your skill shortage point, hopefully this will have a knock-on effect in private businesses down the line, because some of the best security professionals you're ever going to get come out of former governmental cybersecurity bodies, or even the military ones. Like I used to sit next to a former Marine, and he was brilliant at cybersecurity, although he started with very little knowledge. So yeah, hopefully that'll help address the cybersecurity shortage. That last part's definitely maybe a 5-year prediction. We won't see that effect for a while.
Yeah, and kind of on that one as well, we've seen, so in Latin America is the only region that for the past few years has actually closed the gap on the shortage, but they also had a few years head start with programs to up-level the skill set of their people, everything from their consumers all the way into the professionals as well, including programs in university to get them prepared and ready to take on cybersecurity roles earlier. in their careers as well. So they had a few years of head start. So other countries such as, I know, India, Australia. I believe I saw some stuff coming out of the UK, and in Germany and Spain as well have implemented similar programs. So it's going to be a few years. I mean, if we're still on the air, maybe we'll look a few years from now and see if we're still if that one was true or not. But yeah, hopefully we'll start seeing the gap starting to close a little bit with some of those programs maturing in some of these countries. But one that I think about for 2025, and I'm still not sure how to measure this one, but the global outage that happened back in July was I think that was a wake up call to everybody, because it's one of those things that could happen to quite literally any software vendor. And so what I think is going to happen is disaster recovery planning or business continuity planning is going to be more than just cybersecurity. It's going to be IT, tighter alignment between IT and cybersecurity to ensure that whatever business continuity, disaster recovery planning, incident response planning that's available, hopefully it's available at the organization and things are documented and updated in regular time. That it does include outages like that, because that was an incident. It wasn't a security incident, but it was an incident that took down a whole lot of organizations, that took down economies.
Affected the availability, right? So one of the principles of the CIA, confidentiality, integrity, and availability triad for security incidents. I think you're right. It's brought that lens probably more so on controls that have a high level of access. So that, security controls sometimes need kernel level access to be able to monitor the type of attacks, and that is a high level of access that could, well, as it did, can stop you from doing your daily stuff. And it happens in security, not on that scale, but quite, if we make an incorrect assessment, you think this is a threat. So and so's logged in from a completely random holiday and they started doing loads of admin actions. It's the middle of the night. You might isolate that user, contain the threat, and then you find out they've been on holiday and they were just logging in, do some extra work, or even help with a kind of an emergency, and you've blocked them out. So security can be a blocker to operations sometimes. Obviously, mostly it's facilitating them, or good security is facilitating them. So we've definitely seen more scrutiny on how we update our security solutions, and generally customers have been very happy with kind of what we've been able to produce of our kind of QA quality assurance processes and so on. So I think that will continue to continue.
Yeah, continue to continue.
And if I could just, on the topic of supply chain ones, I think the other one I was thinking of, and I think you've set me up nicely for it, is I reckon this is my bold prediction, we'll see an LLM supply chain compromise, and it'll be on one of the code builders. So, the kind of the junior developer kind of AI models they're creating that do the junior dev responsibilities, and there's meant to be a senior human in the process who then uses them to help them, quality controls it, and pushes it out. I think we're going to see a supply chain compromise, maybe directly or maybe just by compromising data and putting loads of dodgy information on how to code things out there, if it's an open model. And we'll see who is really QAing this code effectively and who is just kind of pushing to production and putting a bit too much faith in the AI coding, perhaps.
Wow. Okay, that was pretty bold. We'll see that one. I do have one that's probably be easier to track. Since ChatGPT, we know that phishing emails have become much harder to detect, because it takes away the grammar issues that usually were easy to spot, and the punctuation issues that are easy to spot as well. But the prediction that I'd make is, our teams look at millions of emails at any given time, and they're starting to see spam in countries that didn't see spam before, specifically ones that have challenging alphabets. I just saw talking to the team last week, and they said they saw their first phishing email. It was a payroll diversion attack in Japanese. First one we've ever seen in Japanese. Wow. Japan is one of those countries that historically has had extremely low phishing because it's a difficult alphabet. And so I would expect that we're probably going to see maybe double the number of countries that we normally do in a given month. In a given month, I think we see something like, at least Within, it depends on which group it is, but I know with the group that's watching over payroll diversion attacks, they see between 3 and 6 different languages every month. So it wouldn't surprise me if we're here a year from now and they're up to 9 to 12 different languages now, languages that either we don't see as much or we didn't see at all before, just higher volumes and more things, because again, ChatGPT and GenAI has removed, for the attackers, has removed some of those obvious barriers to try and trick their victims into taking action.
Wow.
So,
and I bet those countries who aren't used to getting those phishing attacks, or are only used to getting incredibly rudimentary ones that are, like a 5-year-old has written them out, they're probably going to be more susceptible to clicking on those because they're less prepared, less awareness.
mm-hmm.
I hate to call you out on Antonio, but you technically did do a prediction that said more attacks. But it was more social engineering.
But I added a qualifier. I added a qualifier though.
Yes, you did. I couldn't help myself. I'm sorry.
Oh man.
Well, on that little bit of light moment, do you have any jokes to see us out with? 'Cause I know you love a cringy security joke.
I was listening to this new band today. They were called 1023 Megs. Have you heard of them? Nope. They're pretty good, but they don't have a gig yet.
There it is. There it is. Well, thank you very much for listening. We'll see you next month.
Thanks, everybody.